Ciaran, first of all, for people in the South here who have maybe just seen glimpses of this story, I know it's been running front page with you guys all week since you broke it, but tell us who Michael McMonagle is and a little bit of background to him.
Michael McMonagle, he was a former journalist. He had worked with the Derry Journal newspaper for 10 years, and in 2014 he started working for Sinn Fein as a press officer. So he would have been involved, initially he would have worked in their media department in the Northern Ireland Assembly, and then he worked for a time in the European Parliament, and then he was in London for a couple of years with their Westminster team, and then came back to the Northern Ireland Assembly. So he would have been, as with all press officers, he would have been well known to journalists. He would have been the contact for the party. Sinn Fein have a massive media team, and McMonagle would have been part of that, mainly in the north. Fairly well known in the background, certainly wasn't in charge of the media department, but would have been a fairly prominent figure.
I think more and more a lot of journalists on both sides of the border have taken the route into sort of government jobs because of the dissemination of a lot of media really that's happened, local newspapers, etc. Did you know Michael McMonagle from Derry at all? Or
yeah, well, I worked for the Derry Journal myself years ago, but I had left long before he worked for them, so I would have known him. Again, just known him through the media circles, both before his time with Sinn Fein, and then I would have dealt with them not that often, but I would have dealt with them over the years through his work with Sinn Fein.
So what happened in August of 2021 while he was then working for Sinn Fein at the Northern Ireland Assembly?
It was August the 19th, 2021. He was arrested and questioned in connection with alleged child sex offences. Mainly at that stage it was online, contacting children online with the allegations. The following day he informed Sinn Fein about his arrest, and the party says he was immediately suspended both from his job and party membership. And it appears then he remained on suspension until we now know that around May, June of 2022 his contact with Sinn Fein ended and his employment ended. So in August, a couple of months later, in August 2023, he applied for a job as a communications manager with a charity in Northern Ireland, the British Heart Foundation. And as part of that process, he gave 2 names to the British Heart Foundation for potential referees, and those 2 people were Sean McGeer, who would be probably one of the most senior background figures in Sinn Fein. He was the media director for their operations in the north, and was a very, very influential figure in the party. So Sean McGeer and another press officer, Ciaran McGinley, were the 2 names that McMonagle gave to the British Heart Foundation in terms of referees for his application. So those 2 men were contacted by the charity, and they provided references for McMonagle. And in both the references, there's no mention made of his arrest in August 2021 or any of the reasons why he subsequently went on to leave Sinn Fein. So a few weeks later, September 2023, McMonagle takes up the job with the British Heart Foundation.
And what is the British Heart Foundation, for those who don't know it? What is it raising funds for?
It's a UK-wide charity. There would be a branch based in Belfast as well of it. It campaigns for a lot of things around heart disease, but one of their main focuses would be organ donations, pushing for people to, at the minute it was an opt-out element to the organ donation. You had to fill in a card, fill in a form, where one of their main campaigns over the last couple of years has been pushing for people raising awareness of organ donation and the need for more more donors. So that was one of their main focuses, and that is kind of part of the story in terms of McMonagle, because he starts working, as I said, for the charity in September 2022. is essentially their main press officer in Northern Ireland, pushing their campaigns. In February 2023, he is part of a BHF delegation which goes to Stormont. And that was part of what was known as Dahi's Law campaign. There was a young boy from Belfast, Dahi McGowan, and Dahi's been waiting on a heart transplant for a few years, and his family have been pushing for more organ donations and just raising awareness of the importance around that. And they were pushing for a change in the law, which meant that people had to, it was automatically assumed that people were going to be organ donors unless they opted out. So in February 2023, the British Heart Foundation were part of a delegation that went to Stormont to push for support for the campaign. It was a high-profile event. There was TV cameras there was a lot of media, photographers. So McMonagle is front and centre in terms of the British Heart Foundation delegation. He's pictured carrying the banner for the charity into Stormont, into the main hall in Stormont, and there's a lot of activity, and he's pictured at that. So that was February of last year. And then the story develops then, and it was in July last year, I had got wind of a court case coming up in which McMonagle was going to be charged with alleged child sex offences. So Sunday World published a story in July 2023 about that. The British Heart Foundation, when contacted, said that they knew nothing about it. And following the article, they suspended McMonagle, and he appeared in court a few days later then.
And just to get the timeline right then, so he is at that point 18 months to 2 years relieved of his job in Sinn Fein. He had obviously been suspended on paid leave for a period of time, but once his contract ran out, he goes out into the workplace, finds the job with the British Heart Foundation, gets it probably on the references of his former Sinn Féin colleagues. That investigation is all the while going on until the PPS recommend these charges. So he's due up in August 2023. I'm sure the charity were horrified.
Yeah, well, as I said, that was the first day they say that after being contacted by Sunday World, that was the first time they knew about the offences. And then a few weeks later, he was sacked from the charity. Obviously, at that stage, I know in hindsight now, but at that stage, when he got the job with the charity, it was still, he hadn't been charged yet. But he was still under police investigation. It was an ongoing investigation. So that's at the heart of it, the whole situation, that who knew what and when, and why was the information, when he left Sinn Féin, obviously under a cloud, how was he able, a few months later, to get a job with a charity which, through its work, can often come in contact with children? How was he able to get that job without it being flagged up by his previous employer?
And presumably from when he was charged before the courts until his trial came up, you couldn't obviously write about any of this stuff in the background. This had to remain outside the public record. So what happens with him in court? First appearance was in August 2023. He actually, on his first day that he was due before the court, he didn't turn up. And it turned out then he had been found at home with a neck injury, and he had been taken to hospital. And I think it was the following day he appeared in court with a bandage around his neck. So that was his first court appearance. He denied the offences. He then was, as happens, he was remanded. He was released on bail, and he appeared in court quite a few times more in terms of, continuing just the judicial process in terms of back in court and remanded and further bail, and it was leading up to trial. But then beginning of last week, he was rearraigned in court, and he admitted the offences. Originally, he was charged with 3 offences, but that later became 15 offences he was charged with. He admitted to 14 of them.
and he was released on bail, and he's due to be sentenced now in November. But as you say, that we knew stuff in the background. Like, I had been told that he had got official references from Sinn Féin for the job that he took up with the charity. So once he admitted the charges and the case was reaching a conclusion, the obvious question was, what process had been in place in terms of references from Sinn Féin. So I contacted Sinn Féin, and we now know that inquiry sparked a real, what they're calling an internal process within Sinn Féin to establish the facts. Now, I had contacted them on the basis that we were publishing an article in last weekend, Sunday World. So, as you would know, the process of, you contact someone or an organisation, you give them a deadline and make it clear that, an article is being published. So I contacted them on Tuesday. Come Saturday evening, we haven't heard back from them. So the paper goes to bed, as from a practical point of view, it's printed. On Saturday evening, I then received a reply from Sinn Féin, which the article was published in the paper saying that they hadn't replied to our questions. But then on Saturday evening, they sent through a very detailed response to the questions we had posed, in which they say the following inquiry, they had looked into the matter and as I said, internal process, and this uncovered that the two press officers, Sean McGear and Ciaran McGinley, had supplied references to the British Heart Foundation about McMonagle. Sinn Féin says that this was done without the party's permission and that it was unacceptable and wrong, and that following this process that took place within Sinn Féin last week, Sean McGear and Ciaran McGinley resigned from the party, resigned from the jobs and party membership on Saturday morning.
What time did you get the statement from them on Saturday evening?
It was around 6:15,
right.
Which, as you know, now with the newspapers and deadlines and printing and the older days, the papers would have been printed a lot later, but now it's a case of pages going to bed a lot earlier. So,
and a political party would know exactly sort of deadlines and stuff.
Exactly. I had contacted them Tuesday, clearly stating, about the plans they were on Arrogance on Sunday, so they know, when the deadline should be, and with the Ardèche happening at the weekend, that that was maybe a factor, but they, it wasn't a case of, they didn't know when. If, as I said, in terms of the newspaper, so the paper on Sunday morning carried the story about, these questions around that. McMonagle had been at this event at Stormont while he was still under police investigation, and there was a lot of questions around that. So that was in the print edition. But then obviously when we get the statement on Saturday evening, the story was published on Sunday morning about in relation to the revelation that the two press officers had resigned and that they had given references without the party's permission.
It's hard to understand the thinking process of that release of that statement so late on that Saturday night. Did they not, and are Sinn Féin leading you to believe that they hadn't got to the bottom of this until that point, despite having from Tuesday up until Saturday evening? Or were they somehow trying to take control of the narrative in the aftermath of the print edition going, that they were going to take control of the headlines in a more positive way by the Sunday?
Yeah, well, only they can answer that question. But as you would well know, there's a lot of media manipulation in the background, in relation to timings and when you would things, particularly with the online world now and the 24/7 news cycle. But maybe as I say, in the older days, that maybe would have played a part, but I don't think it matters.
You don't think it makes any sense? It is a very strange sort of a timing-wise, and I hope I haven't lost the interest of the regular people out there who don't work on deadlines and with sort of awaiting press statements. But it is this is a huge, powerful political organisation that have for a long time had some of the best PR going both north and south of the border, and they know exactly how to deal with the media, how to deal with the press, and to own their own narrative. What I can't understand is that this guy, McMonagle, while, it wouldn't have been everyday talk as he's charged with these, as he's been investigated, first of all, with these very serious offences, as he's been charged with them. It's not for public consumption, the story at that point, because you have to respect that the court needs you only to report on what has been said at that point. But within the kind of the realms of Sinn Fein, within the press office, this must have been a story that was on everybody's minds over the coffee machines and the water tankards as they meet. They're talking about this guy. They knew him. They worked with him. He was one of theirs. They know since 2021 that he has been arrested and quizzed in relation to this. They know since 2023, is it, or 2, that he's been charged with it. They know this case is coming up, and they know nothing of these references going. They've never heard this. They've never... and they didn't sanction them. It seems very strange that they know absolutely zero until they go and talk to these two individuals who obviously tell them that, oh yeah, we sent those references, but you didn't know anything about it.
And that's the crux of the story, I think, and the situation. Here was someone who, fairly senior in an organisation, had been arrested and then subsequently leaves it, under somewhat of a cloud. Like if you work for somewhere and someone is arrested and being investigated for, such serious offences, as you say, people will know, and people will know, someone leaves an organisation, the obvious question is why, when people are going to find out. And that's in every organisation, but particularly with a major political party, it's going to be the talk. But it was something that wasn't. It was very well kept under a lid in terms of outside world. That the article in the Sunday World last year was the first time it had come out, and no one knew, because the article didn't name him at the time. Said he was a senior Sinn Fein background figure, and I was inundated with texts and messages from journalists all over Northern and said, who is it? And it was kind of, no one really knew about it outside of Sinn Fein, but it seems hard to believe that people in Sinn Fein people in Sinn Fein know they knew about it, but the extent of how many people and how senior it went, it seems hard to believe that they didn't have a good grasp of the situation. And then the fact that he was then working for the charity, that was well known as well. That was publicly. That came out publicly during the court hearings. So the fact that then we now in a situation where the case is more or less ended, he's going to be sentenced next month, but the case had ended. And to me, it seemed quite an obvious question, about how did he get the job after leaving Sinn Fein. So to me, it was an obvious question to ask Sinn Fein. I can't believe that we're now in a position where Sinn Fein themselves didn't realise they were going to be asked at some stage about this, and it seems that they weren't prepared for it. The fact that when I contacted them last week, it seems to real thrown just they didn't know, they weren't expecting it, essentially. And and then this is all this detail has come out as a result. But it seems for such a well-run organisation, political party who are so savvy in terms of media relations and getting their message out there and brand Sinn Fein, that they weren't, that they didn't have a chat about this,
They weren't on top of this. I mean, this is just such a huge story.
And again, I would stress that McMonagle was, he, originally obviously under police investigation, he hadn't been charged when he got that job, but the fact that he was now in court, and he denied the offences. So if it had been that he was found not guilty, then it was a non-story as such. But still, you would assume that an organisation like Sinn Fein would have been preparing for the worst case scenario.
Exactly.
It seems they would.
I just want to ask you something, because I had this discussion with somebody there recently about a separate story, but not totally dissimilar to this. So Sinn Féin would have been his employer at the time, right? And he was on contract or whatever. He's arrested and questioned in relation to these very serious offences. So an employer presumably can, somebody can leave the employment, or they can keep them on paid leave pending the outcome of the investigation. That seems a fair thing. Somebody is innocent really until convicted, aren't they? But what is their legal position if, knowing that this guy was suspended on paid leave pending the outcome of this, if somebody comes looking for references, where does that leave you? And also, does somebody like McMonagle not need what we would say is they get a sort of a clearance from the Gardaí here? Do the PSNI not need to clear somebody to go working with a charity that might have, that somebody would be working with children perhaps? So is this a grey area that we're all left in when somebody is charged pending a conviction? And is there too many sort of employment laws there?
Yeah, it's an important phrase you use there is when they're, well, I suppose once they're charged.
Well, once they're charged, things change, surely.
Aye, but when under police investigation, it definitely is a grey area. And of course, it's a premise of innocent until proven guilty.
Mm-hmm.
We've had a lot of high-profile cases in recent years in terms of celebrities being arrested and then being named publicly, and then the charges go nowhere. So for every Jimmy Savile, there's an innocent person has been questioned, or yes. So it is a very great area, and it's important to keep stressing with hindsight. When we're talking back to in this particular case a couple of years ago, when he left Sinn Féin, it was still a police investigation.
Yes.
When he got the job with the charity, it was still a police investigation. So there's a grey area there in terms of legal. But I think the real crux of this is from a moral point of view. Mm-hmm. Is it not just giving someone what we've got a heads up? Saying that if someone's looking, are you aware of this in the background? Are you aware of the potential situation here?
I mean, can you refuse to give a reference? And is that enough said, sort of thing? I mean, if you had come looking for, if I'm going looking for a job with you and my previous employers just say, sorry, we're not going to give a reference, can they do that? And,
I know of situations in the past where people, of course you can refuse to give a reference. There's no legal requirement.
Yeah.
And if you refuse to give a reference, that in itself is a fairly big statement. So
yeah,
that would maybe flag up an issue there. So I think, again, that's part of the story here that, people are saying. So if they thought they legally, well, I don't think that is the case, but why did they give the references? And again, it could be, they may have been friends, and, again, I stress that he was under investigation at the time. He wasn't charged with anything. So it could have been a case of they believing that this is going to go nowhere.
Yeah.
He has a right. He has a right to get a job. Look for work. So, as I'm saying, we're certainly looking at a different light now in hindsight. Now he's admitted these offences, and we're coming back and looking at.
I mean, also, on a reference, would you be in a position if you were in Sinn Féin to say that McMonagle had worked for us for this period of time? He stopped working for us in August of 2021, and his contract ended. It's like what you're not saying, maybe, I think, that for the new prospective employer is helpful, useful. Gaps there, you start wondering what's happened. But as the previous employer, you're maybe not doing anything illegal or damaging their reputation. You're just laying out facts. The references were clearly what got him the job. Well,
that was, we don't know what was in the references. Obviously, there's data protection issues there. But it's that, was it just a case of them contacting Sinn Féin to confirm the dates that he worked for them? Or was there questions within there about, well, you assume there was questions on there about his work with the organisation, but for all intents and purposes, he could have been, a very good press officer. He was good at his job, and that could have been the details of the reference. You're not going to get a question on a reference, is is this person under investigation for, any offences? That's not going to happen.
No.
So it's any information in that sense is going to be additional, or as it's, as might, it's maybe not official, but we would, that you can pick up the phone and say to someone, just to let you know, this has happened and this could be a potential there. So, but Sinn Féin, obviously, they're saying that they knew nothing about the references anyway, and if the application for references had come to a higher level than Ciaran, they would have refused to give references. They would have refused
to give them. So that's their position. McMonagle shows us a massive amount of arrogance that he, in the position he was in, under investigation and later to be charged, that he'd go for this job, that he would publicly, stand with the march for Daithí, who is a 7-year-old child, I think, who's almost the face of heart transplants, is he, in the north?
Yeah.
He shows a huge amount of arrogance to do that.
So that's and if you, well, you can't put yourself on his head, but as I said, the event in Stormont in particular was high profile at cameras. You've probably seen the footage of, that he's walking in to Stormont holding the banner, and he was communications manager. He was kind of, generally the media people are in the background. But on that occasion, he was front and centre. He was pictured widely over the newspapers. He was in, you can see him in the TV footage. So, as you say, there was an arrogance there of, I can go to this event, I can be seen. And then, again, what has transpired out, that the questions are, he would have been seen there by former Sinn Féin colleagues at the Assembly. Like, he would have been in that building every day when he worked for Sinn Féin. Now, a few months later down the line, when he's got a new job, again under this cloud of a police investigation, he comes back to Stormont, is mingling around. I don't know if you've been to Stormont, but as you go in, there's a huge entrance hall, and when you see the cameras and the press conferences are usually held, it's a big space, but people are coming and going, running around. So this event was big news. So there's a lot of people there, a lot of politicians, a good PR opportunity for both the campaign and the politicians. So McMonagle was walking around here. So, and you can see his former colleagues, a lot of his former colleagues were there and would have seen him. So the question is, like, who were people thinking, did people know he had gone on to work for the charity, or people seeing him and saying, why is Michael McMonagle here? I thought he left Sinn Féin. I was actually talking to a politician yesterday who was at the event. He's a politician from another party, and he was at the event, and he remembers seeing McMonagle, but thinking, I haven't seen him for a while around here. He must be in another Sinn Féin department. So he had known McMonagle from Stormont and seen him, in terms of being a Sinn Féin press officer. Hadn't seen him for quite a while. Sees him at this event in Stormont and is thinking, I haven't seen him around for a while. So he's obviously in another department of Sinn Féin. So the story of his, leaving Sinn Féin wasn't well known outside of that.
Right, it was kept within a small sort of bubble, I suppose. As regards the actual offences, do you know much detail about them? What it was that he was accused and found guilty of?
I think it was mainly online, contacting young people under 16. And in one case, the child was under 13, and contacting them online and inciting them to take part in sexual activity is the general gist of the offences that he's admitted.
Was he caught in a sting in one of those kind of pedo ring things?
We don't know his answer. The police just put out, we've asked for more details about the investigation, but no, we don't know in terms of how he was caught.
So I suppose finally, what's next with this story? Where is it going? And Sinn Féin are holding their ground, obviously. I'm sure you're about as popular as the proverbial you-know-what in a spacesuit with them. But what's happening next, and where does it go next, the story?
That is a good question, but we don't know that there's been a hell of a lot of focus in the north this week around the story, and a lot of questions being asked of Sinn Féin. Now, they have come out, Michelle O'Neill and Conor Murphy, a minister in the Assembly, have both come out and defended, basically repeating what they've said in their statement at the weekend, saying that they knew nothing about the references. If they would have been approached, they would have refused, and it was unacceptable for the two former colleagues to give them a reference, and they've now left the party. So Sinn Féin obviously were hoping that would be the end of it, but there's been a lot of questions around who knew what and how far did it go up the line. You know, Sean McGeer in particular was a massively influential figure in Sinn Féin, mainly in the background, but he will be a huge loss to them in terms of their operations. So there's still questions being asked up here around, like, Michelle O'Neill has been pictures come out of her standing in the eye line of Michael McMonagle at the event Stormwood last year, and she says she didn't see him or wasn't aware that of his role within the British Heart Foundation. So she's still facing pressure to clarify issues there. And the main thing coming out of it is Sinn Féin's the system, the procedures within Sinn Féin in terms of child safety protocols. Or there's been a few scandals affected. You had Maria Gall situation. There was other sort of child protection issues that have affected Sinn Féin in the last couple of years. This is the latest of them. Yeah. So on previous occasions, Sinn Féin have said that they've taken steps to address the issue and improve. So this is bringing that focus again on how things operate within Sinn Féin. We know that Sinn Féin is a very close, very, very close kind of organisation, much more so than other political parties. They're very, very good at keeping things in house. They're very good at
holding secrets.
Yeah, basically, and we know that, and this is part of that kind of secrecy within Sinn Féin is now coming back into the play of who knew about this, how high up did it go?
Yeah,
and I know it's been Simon Harris was talking about this issue this week. There's been pushes for Mary Lou McDonald gave a statement in it all about it. So it's going beyond a northern story. It's having bigger repercussions for Sinn Féin. So that's where I think the story is going to go. It's still pressure on Sinn Féin that they really, come out once and for all and clarify exactly what happened. If that's the case of, yes, we knew this or we didn't know that, which to be fair, they have, the senior people have spoke about it this week. They've answered quite a few questions, but there's a lot of questions still there.
Is there freedom of information opportunities for journalists within this story have you access to any sort of, communications within Sinn Féin that happened around this guy or?
No, I know. I often look on endlessly for the journalists in the South that your freedom of information legislation is a lot more open than the UK's, which obviously affects Northern Ireland. It's not freedom of information wouldn't extend to political parties' internal correspondence.
It's a non-freedom of information, is it?
Basically, it's just a minefield. It's not as much as this.
Yeah, you're relying on leaks or whatever. But look, a fantastic story, a brilliant crime story and a political story all wrapped into one. So I look forward to reading your own follow-up this week, Ciaran, and thank you very much for coming on.
Thanks, Nicola.
I'm Nicola Tallant and you're watching Crime World, a podcast about criminals, drugs and the underworld in Ireland and across the globe. Make sure you subscribe to our channel and turn on notifications so you can be the first to watch all our latest episodes. You can also listen wherever you get your podcasts.